All right, today we're going to break down one of the most important jobs in the entire airline industry, handling an unaccompanied minor. This isn't just about following a checklist. It's about a promise we make, a sacred trust, really, to keep our youngest passengers completely safe from the second they're in our care until they're back with their family. So let's get started. First things first, let's make sure we're all on the same page. What exactly is an unaccompanied minor, or UM? Well, it's pretty simple. It's any child flying without their parent or legal guardian. The moment we check them in, the airline, and that means us, we assume total responsibility for them. It's a huge deal, and we have to honor that responsibility. So, what does it take to get that journey right? To make it safe and, totally seamless for the child? Well, it demands a perfect, step-by-step procedure where every single person knows their role. There is absolutely, positively no room for error. Think of this as your guide to getting it right every time. We've broken the whole thing down into 5 distinct phases. We're going to start at the very beginning with check-in and documentation. Then we'll move to the pre-boarding process, cover what happens during in-flight care, and then talk about the super critical arrival and handover. We'll wrap it all up with the key safety rules that tie everything together. This is basically our roadmap for an unbreakable chain of custody. Okay, let's dive right in with Phase 1, check-in and documentation. I like to call this the foundation of the journey because honestly, if we don't get this part right, the whole thing can fall apart. This is where that official chain of custody begins, and precision is everything. So at the check-in counter, there are 4 things that have to happen, no exceptions. First, you verify all the travel documents, the ticket, their passport or ID, and any visas they might need. Second, you make sure that handling form is filled out completely and signed. Third, you collect and then you verbally confirm the contact info for the guardians on both ends of the trip, departure and arrival. And finally, you give the child their identification, usually a badge or a wristband, so that every staff member can clearly see who they are. And I really want to double down on this one point. That completed form, it is the single most important piece of paper in this entire process. It's like the child's passport within our system. If even one piece of information is missing, it can cause a massive failure later on. Getting the paperwork perfect is our first and best line of defense. All right, Phase 2, the pre-boarding process. So the paperwork is all in order. Now our focus shifts to getting the child from the public side of the airport and safely onto the plane. And here again, it's a really clear 4-step process. First, a staff member has to personally walk the child through security and immigration. Second, and this is huge, the child is never left alone. They stay in a supervised area like a lounge the whole time. Third, we make sure they get to board first so they can get settled without all the chaos. And finally, and this is so important, all of those documents are formally handed over person to the lead cabin crew member. Let's be really clear about this handover. This isn't just about passing a folder of papers. This is a formal transfer of responsibility. The ground staff needs to get a clear, verbal confirmation from the cabin crew that they now have custody of the child and all their documents. It's a crucial handoff. And that leads us right into Phase 3, in-flight care. The moment those aircraft doors close, the cabin crew becomes that child's sole guardian. At 30,000 feet, the responsibility is completely on their shoulders. They are the guardians in the sky. Up in the air, the name of the game is proactive care. First, the child has to be seated somewhere they can be easily seen, usually near a crew station. The crew then gives them special attention, making sure they get their meals, they're comfortable, and just feeling okay. Regular check-ins are must, and they need to be documented. And just as important, the crew has to keep up a calm, reassuring conversation, especially if the child seems nervous or scared. You have to remember, proactive care is everything. We don't wait for a child to tell us they're thirsty or scared. We anticipate their needs. We check on them. We make them feel safe. This is just as much about their emotional well-being as it is about their physical safety. And now we've reached Phase 4, arrival and handover. This is the final link in the chain, and honestly, you could argue it's the most high-risk part of the whole journey. Getting this part right is absolutely non-negotiable. So when the plane lands, the process looks a lot like departure, but the stakes are even higher. The cabin crew hands the child and their documents directly to a designated ground staff member right there on the aircraft. That staff member then walks the child through the entire arrivals process, and then we get to the single most critical step of all, meticulously carefully checking the receiving guardian's government ID against the details on our form. The child is released only when we have a perfect ID match and a signature. Let me say that again, because if you remember one thing from this, let it be this. Identity verification is non-negotiable. If the ID doesn't perfectly match the information we have on that form, there is no handover. Period. No exceptions, no excuses. Okay, finally, let's talk about the key safety rules. These are the non-negotiable principles that are the bedrock of this entire procedure, from the moment the child arrives at the airport to the moment they leave. There are really 4 golden rules here. 1, a UN must never ever be left alone. 2, you always have to confirm the guardian's details at both ends of the journey. 3, document every single step. Every handover needs a signature and a timestamp. And 4, if anything comes up, communication with the parents is absolutely essential. And let's just focus on that first one for a second, because it is the foundation of the whole system. The must never be left alone. From the check-in desk to the final handover, that child has to be under the direct, continuous watch of a designated airline employee. No exceptions. And just as crucial is this: document every step. That documentation is what creates the unbroken paper trail. It's the proof that every handover was done correctly. It ensures accountability. And you know the saying, if it wasn't written down, it didn't happen. So we're going to end with this question for you. This whole procedure, it's a chain, and a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. Every single one of us, check-in staff, gate agents, cabin crew, arrival staff, we are all a critical link in that chain. So ask yourself, is your link strong? Because for that child who is counting on you, it absolutely has to be.